Member.
Keith Locke.
Speaker, over the last couple of days I've questioned the Minister of Defence about revelations that our SAS has been taking prisoners in Afghanistan and handing them over to agencies that have either tortured them or might well have tortured them. And as a result of journalist John Stevenson's interviews with Afghans our SAS has handed over to US forces in 2002, we know that they were in effect tortured and some of them were sent to Guantanamo Bay. And I think an apology from us as a country is due, and possibly some compensation, and I don't accept the Minister's view that this is purely a US problem, because when the prisoners were handed over by us in 2002, our forces knew for certain that they were likely to be tortured in Kandahar. There were plenty of reports by then of torture at the US detention centre at Kandahar. In regard to the SAS deployment since 2009, the Minister and the Defence Force have long claimed that they haven't been taking prisoners. When pushed, they've responded saying, well, yes, the SAS soldiers have been, quote, in the vicinity, end quote, on 22 occasions, and operations the SAS did with the Crisis Response Unit. Yesterday, the Minister said that the SAS was, quote, in support, end quote, of the CRU on 24 occasions. And it stretches credibility that in all the detaining that was done in those joint operations, it was always done by the CRU on 24 separate occasions. This clearly is just a legal deception so that our government can say that however badly those prisoners were subsequently tortured, we bear none of the responsibility and we had none of the responsibility for following up the fate of those prisoners because the CRU was the, quote, detaining authority. I'm afraid that legal sleight of hand won't wash with the International Criminal Court if New Zealand is brought before it in relation to the torture of any of these prisoners. And the Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Moreno Ocampo, is right now looking at the role of US-led forces in prisoner abuse. In fact, it is likely that our SAS took the lead in a number of raids with the Afghan CRU, as they did in the raid last Christmas on the Kabul offices of Tiger International. The Tiger International people interviewed by John Stevenson say it was the SAS that entered their building and detained them at gunpoint, and the Minister today has confirmed that. And later these prisoners, and they were prisoners, were handed over to the National Directorate of Security, who on this occasion let them go because they found out they had nothing to do with the Taliban, just innocent contractors for the United States, in fact. The Minister did mention a case yesterday where one prisoner was taken on January the 30th this year, which he couldn't avoid because it was not a joint operation with the CRU, and he claimed that the proper post-arrest monitoring had been done by a defence force. Maybe so, but there is no guarantee or evidence of proper monitoring on earlier occasions, other occasions from 2002 to the present, including the 24 joint SAS-CRU operations where prisoners were taken and our SAS was only in the vicinity. And torture does continue in Afghan prisons. John Stevenson's on-the-spot interviews have brought out the extent of torture which took place following the SAS handing over prisoners in 2002 to the US authorities. He's shown that prisoners were taken and handed over by our SAS at Tiger International. He's challenged the credibility of many of the New Zealand Defence Force denials over the years that either prisoners were taken or that they were properly followed up if they were taken. And what we clearly need is an independent inquiry where John Stevenson, the Minister and the NZDF can put all the evidence on the table so that we as a nation can go forward absolutely sure that our troops won't be handing over Afghan prisoners to torture. And if we are simply unable to guarantee that the prisoners our forces take and hand over are not mistreated, then that is another reason why SAS should not be in Afghanistan. And I think, as commentators have said, after the killing of Osama bin Laden and the exposure that Al-Qaeda is such a marginal force.
John Hayes.
Thank you very much. I couldn't disagree more with that man, and reflect on his associations previously through his family with both Pol Pot himself, and before that his parents with Stalin. And when I think about the torture and things that those people got into, it's just astonishing to hear these views expressed by him in the House this afternoon. Mr. Speaker, last week it poured in Cape Kidnappers, south to Porongahau. More than half a metre of rain fell in 48 hours. When the ground was absolutely saturated, there was a 4.6 magnitude earthquake, about 10k offshore. Those two events have caused huge damage to about 100 to 150 farms in my electorate and just north into Craig Foster's electorate in Tukituk. Large sections of the hillside have absolutely fallen away, stripped, exposing underlying papa. It is a really serious problem now. Some farms have lost up to 60% of their pasture. This is a really distressing situation, Mr. Speaker, because these farmers have already endured 3 back-to-back droughts over the last 2.5 years, and just as summer and autumn had been quite kind, and because of the government's policies, prices for wool, beef, meat, sheep meat and dairy products were all restoring farmer confidence, this event occurred. A really bad time because farmers were repaying debt, were getting themselves reorganised, but this destructive storm has seriously damaged between 100 and 150 farms. Mr. Speaker, I particularly want to record my thanks and those of the farmers involved, and also the Mayor of Central Hawke's Bay, Peter Butler, for the excellent work done by David Carter, Minister of Agriculture, in rearranging his program last weekend so that on Saturday he was able to come and actually view the area and to meet 35-odd farmers at Blackhead. This visit enabled us to establish, first of all, the farmers' priorities. First one, we've got to get stock out of the region. Secondly, we've got to get grass seed and clover seed resown while that soil is really wet. And third, we've got to get into things like securing fencing, getting task force green workers out there, organising tax relief and other services provided by the Rural Support Trust. This visit enabled me to establish direct communication lines with affected farmers, and having asked questions earlier today about the importance of rural broadband, I have a system that has now been set up so I can communicate from here with those farmers back into the Minister's office, and it really highlighted for me, and I'm sure the farmers involved, the importance of rural broadband and getting it up and running in rural New Zealand. When I think about the comments from Mr. Goff today and some of his colleagues in the Labour Party or in his caucus, I think back to 2008, to the election, when this government, not being concerned about farmers, decided that they would go and fork out $40 million to bring back St James Station in the South Island. Now, why would you spend $40 million buying a farm that you already owned? Because this was a leasehold property. This was the sort of waste, absolute waste, that government got engaged in, which is why we inherited an economy that was in deep trouble. And if you think about Helen Clark, when she left this house, she said, "But for me, the jewel in the crown was the transfer of Molesworth Station and St James Station to the Department of Conservation." And she talked about purchasing the pastoral lease. Well, the pastoral lease we already owned. She was actually buying back the improvements, and they weren't worth $40 million. I've just got to say, Mr. Speaker, that the past 2.5 years contrast very strongly with Labor's previous track record going back many years, even before the global recession hit, of borrow and spend. Absolutely.
And tax. Don't forget tax.
Borrow, spend and tax. Quite right. Our current forecasts show that New Zealand's external liabilities, that's what we owe to foreign leaders, jumped to almost $250 billion Why? Because of poor decision making on the part of that government.
The Honourable David Parker.
Speaker, we heard